I don't think of it. Do you want Mr. Canary to challenge the jurors, or are you ready to accept anyone that's put into the box?
Well, let's try. You've already tried the case.
Just a minute. Please, the court has made certain orders concerning publicity, and we are going to make a request of the court this morning so that we can have questions in an orderly manner if the court agrees to do it.
Charlie, can we get a picture of you back here?
You looking for it, Charlie?
Hey, Charlie? Can you look back here for us, please? How have they been treating you, Charlie?
What do you need, Charlie? You have eyes? Open them. Anything you'd like to say?
Charlie? What were you thinking of when you saw Linda Kasabian yesterday?
I was thinking of how pretty she looked.
Are you upset with Linda?
No, not at all.
Do you think she will testify for the prosecution?
That's up to Linda.
Oh, yeah. Do you care?
Care?
Yeah, whether she does or not?
That's up to her. She hasn't got anything to do with me.
But don't you have any feelings about it?
Feelings? All my feelings are good.
Charlie, this is a chance
The sun
for
was
you.
out this morning. You notice it?
Mm-hmm.
Officer?
Gentlemen, the judge is going to take the bench, so would you please leave? If you do, maybe this thing will continue in the future. Thank you.
Okay.
That's it.
Get out of here.
Thank you for your cooperation.
Nice job. Thank you. Susan, would you answer a couple of questions for us?
What did you think of this morning's proceedings, Susan?
I didn't think anything about it.
What about Linda?
Do you want a,
Susan?
I think she's awful pretty.
Back it up.
do you want a press conference too?
I don't fear for anybody's testimony.
You think Charles should have a news conference?
I don't
Would you
know.
like to have a news conference, Susan?
Sure.
What would you tell us?
Hey, Chappie, what you want to hear?
Let me see if I get it.
Good, thank you.
We're going. Go.
We had been watching these so-called hippies for some time, and one evening the district attorney asked me, and along with the highway patrol, if they would furnish us some men and some automobiles to go down and arrest these hippies, that they were on a car theft. deal. They had been investigated for cars. They had stopped a car, and what we run is a 28 and 29 is who owns the car and the registration of the car. So it was sent to CI, and they found out it was stolen. This is what they went in for. So we furnished a car and 2 men for the north end of Goler Wash. You can only get in from the east, rather, and the west. And we furnished 2 men in a car from the east side and 1 car and 3 men from the west side. And they went in and made the arrest. The people from the east went on with them after they got there. They had waited a couple hours, and they found some 27 people in there. Now, they did not find these all at once. There was clothing, the labels torn out, some of it was very expensive. There's gasoline. In one group, there's 500 barrels, or 5 barrels of 50 gallons each. There was clothing and food stashed at various places. The type of people they are, they did not set them in or something, they just threw them in the bushes. They were like someone had thrown some trash away.
You want to stop it now?
I'll not answer that at this time.
Do you have somebody in custody that you think might be the leader of this group?
I'd rather not answer that.
How do these people conduct themselves, the people that were arrested with Manson?
Like children, not like adults. Some of these girls that claimed they were 22, 23 years old, there was 1 or 2 that I doubt very much if they were 14, possibly 15.
Are they allowed to associate with him?
Never.
Inside the jail here?
Never, no.
Can they communicate with him? Can he communicate?
In no way.
There was one report, Sheriff, that Manson at one time had an IQ of, I think, 114, which would place him in a very intelligent group. How do you...
This is very possible. I'm not being a... It's been there for many years. The water runs in a pipe on the northeast end and out the southwest end. And you know how algae and moss will gather on a pond that has been left stagnant or unused for possibly a year or 6 months. There was moss in places I'd say would take up 25% of the pond, and they were bathing in that without even taking the moss off and whatnot.
Did they resist arrest in any way?
Well, I was not there during the arrest. This so-called Mr. Manson, who says he's Jesus Christ, was telling them that when the officers, if and when they came to arrest him, that he would have a knife and a gun and cut him and shoot him and whatnot. And where they found him was in a cupboard that a good-sized collie dog couldn't get in, crouched in there. Now, that's how he fought, with a knife and a gun. All the rest were out in the open, but he was if he is the leader, this is how he knifed and cut the police when he was taken under arrest. They thought it was a woolly dog, and the only reason that they didn't know that his hands were in his hair, and when they pulled him out, that's where he was.
Did he make any kind of gestures?
Well, I'd rather not go into that part. There were some weapons, I understand.
Sheriff, on the charges on which...
They were going to try to bust him out of here, so we took security measures. And
when did you hear this?
2 days before Thanksgiving.
That raiding party was going to try to get him out?
Well, we don't know whether it was a raiding party or whether it was just who it was. We just got the word. We don't divulge these things. There's a certain amount of things that, trustful things that we don't break with anyone, news media or among ourselves, or tell anyone.
Sheriff, what happens to Mr. Manson next?
Well, this a lot depends on what the court finds today in their hearing, which is going on now. I presume
How will Los Angeles become involved in this?
How will they become involved in it? They have the greater charge, and I presume the district attorney will turn them over to the Los Angeles County if the grand jury of Los Angeles County indicts him. As far as I know, they have a better charge than we have. It's a greater charge, a greater degree.
Have you been requested to...
Roll, Dylan. Marty? Great. Mr. Bullios, you can come up just a little. Thank you.
Okay, now can you give us your initial reaction?
Heads down, heads down.
Put it around the other side.
Put it around this way.
There you go.
The trunk round.
7 months. What is the significance, as you see, of the entire trial to perhaps the criminal system?
Well, many new issues have been raised in this trial, which I couldn't go into right now, but almost unprecedented issues have arisen, which the California Supreme Court and United States Supreme Court are going to deal with for the first time.
How many years do you think this case is going to be in the courts, Mr. Bugliosi?
At least 3 or 4 years.
In those closing moments, we heard Charles Manson once again shout out, why didn't we present a defense? What was your reaction?
Well, I told the jury that the defendants had a right to put on a defense. They did not come into this courtroom handcuffed. The defense attorneys could have subpoenaed witnesses to that witness stand just like the prosecution did.
Vince, could you mention one or two of the issues that you say are going to be unprecedented issues that are going to be brought up by this trial?
Well, I think
just one or two.
I have no absolute knowledge, but I don't think any case in history has received this much pre-trial publicity throughout the world. That certainly is one issue. The disappearance of an attorney during the case and an appointment of a substitute attorney at the last second. President Nixon's statement. Now, I blame Charles Manson for that. The jury did not have access to President Nixon's statement. It was Charles Manson himself who showed that headline to the jury. But obviously that's going to be an issue on appeal. Several other issues. The magnitude, the complexity of this trial was just staggering.
Do you expect more trouble in appeal than you had in the actual trial? I mean, in penalty, rather.
I'm confident that the courts upstairs are going to affirm this conviction.
Is there any move that you made during the trial that you regret?
No. Every movement that I make in court, by and large, is not spontaneous. I measure my words. I'm up till 2 and 3 every morning. So any movement I made had been thought about long in advance.
Vince, are you
including
obscenities?
obscenities?
Obscenities? I don't know of any obscenities. Well, suffice it to say that no defendant whom I prosecute is particularly in love with me, and these defendants are no exception. That's about all I'd like to say about
Have you made
that.
up your mind not to try to prove up the amendment cases in the penalty phase?
No, I haven't, Carl. I haven't made up my mind on that. I realize that this is 1 second before midnight, but I haven't made up my mind on that yet.
Would you like to go through this kind of a trial again?
Well, I'm kind of a courtroom battler. I like a trial. I like the excitement, the drama. I was very honored that my office selected me to handle a trial of this magnitude. I think if, in retrospect, I would have accepted again, although the trial did create problems that I never anticipated.
Isn't this a big strain on asking 7 or 12 jurors to wait 7 months in a hotel room?
Yes, it is. It's an enormous imposition on their personal, private lives, unquestionably. And they've stood up remarkably well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vince.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. What obscenities were we talking about?
I don't know. Yeah, they're all Any better chance in this penalty phase than you did in the trial just concluded?
Well, again, we're very, very hopeful that the jury would return a verdict of life. Death certainly wouldn't be appropriate.
Paul, what did the defendants say during
A defense will be presented at penalty, yes.
Paul, what did the defendants say while the verdicts were being read? They were discussing it with some of the attorneys.
The defendants actually anticipated the verdict. They expected the worst. They expected the worst from the beginning. They thought that the verdict was predetermined from the start of the trial, as many of you gentlemen well know.
Did you
Paul, do you think these verdicts can be sustained when the appeals go to the higher courts? Do you see grounds for reversal?
Well, certainly we feel that the overriding, overwhelming issue on appeal is going to be the nature of the prejudicial pretrial publicity and the fact that a change of venue was denied prior to trial.
Mr. Bugliosi, the defense says that they were stymied from the start because they wanted to change the venue and didn't get it, and that the jury was hostile toward them, that in fact they were a hanging jury when they went in.
I don't believe that. This jury is 12 people chosen from this community. They based their verdict solely and exclusively on the evidence that came from that witness stand. They were not influenced in any fashion whatsoever from any pretrial publicity. This is just weeping on the part of the defense.
You know what? The prosecution has spent 8 months presenting one side. The press has been the mouthpiece of the prosecution, and they've succeeded in brainwashing a lot of people into believing everything that Bugliosi has presented, his so-called race war theory. Charlie never preached a race war. He's seen that the people that have been on the bottom, it's time for them to come to the top. You know, the revolution's on. 8 months of one side the public has heard and nothing else. They've thrown the Constitution in the wastebasket. These people have not had a fair trial. From the very onset of this trial, from the very beginning, there has not been one single right, constitutional right, granted to these people. They haven't even been allowed to put on a defense.
Were you surprised by the verdict?
Nobody has been allowed to testify. The verdict doesn't make any difference. It's what they have done to Manson. It's what they are now doing to a lot of people in jail. And it's going to be done to you people next.
Get down. Penalty phase.
Well, the penalty phase, as you know, is going to begin on Thursday, and we would hope that while the jury has convicted these defendants beyond any reasonable doubt, they may have some lingering doubt about whether or not they're guilty. They might also take into consideration the defendants' backgrounds and history and may return a proper verdict of life.
Yell to the judge after the jurors went out?
Something to the effect that it took place at about the time that the jury was being polled, and I think he said that I think they're all guilty, referring to the jury.
What did he say, Paul?
He said something in the direction of the jury that they're all guilty,
but
apparently meaning the jury.
The girls were prepared for what they heard there this morning.
Oh yes, the girls were acclimated to the guilty verdict on all counts.
Paul, how does it shape up for the appeals process now? Will it be a long and lengthy procedure, as everyone suspects?
Well, under California law, Mr. Miller, in the event the defendants are assessed a death penalty, there is an appeal that's automatically taken to the California Supreme Court. In the event that the jury returns one or more verdicts of life, of course, an appeal will follow in the normal procedure, and a notice of appeal will be filed approximately 10 days after the determination.
Will you stick with it, Paul?
Yes, we'll stick with penalty, and I want to stick with it through appeal.
Are you going to present a defense during penalty?
Yes, we are going to present what could be considered a defense.
Can you give us some idea what that might be?
No, I can't, not at this time.
Will the defendants testify in the penalty phase?
That's problematical at this point. The defendants may testify at penalty. That's yet to be decided.
Did the Van Houten verdict surprise you?
Very much so. I think that the big surprise expressed at the council table was the Van Houten verdict and the verdict on the conspiracy counts.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
How do you react to the verdict?
My reaction is that it's a sad day for all of us that the administration of a criminal case where people are charged with serious crimes has to take place in an atmosphere that we have right here. I believe in freedom of speech. I think all of us here believe in freedom of speech, but there is no such thing as an absolute freedom. For instance, you can't use free speech as an excuse to commit libel or slander. And by the same token, we have here a case that for some reason or other, this is an objectively ascertainable fact. The jury, since I believe January 15th, has had this case. They've had at least 7 days plus of full deliberations. And the thing that we have to think about in connection with publicity is what effect does it have upon 12 people who know that they are in an atmosphere such as we have in this Hall of Justice. This Hall of Justice is an armed fortress. There are people on top of the Hall of Justice with guns. Everyone that comes into this Hall of Justice is searched, male and female. The deputies are searched. The deputies search the deputies. They search, everybody searches everybody. And I mean, in this kind of an atmosphere, my subjective feelings are important, but what you did in this case, back in December of '60, had an office in the district attorney's office. You are part and parcel of the district attorney of Los Angeles County. You are his right arm.
Mr. Kaderick, there have been people who have assailed your alleged obstructionism as being responsible for what you term the carnival atmosphere of this trial.
Well, then let me say this. The genesis of an objection is an improper question. The man who asks an improper question asks for an objection. And if you look at it analytically, that's the point. And the point is that what we're talking about here right now is the publicity aspect of it. The fact of the matter is that prosecutors are very clever. Prosecutors know that the jury comes from out in the public, and whatever the prosecution has done in this case well, rather than go into details right now, because we still have a penalty phase coming up, there's no question about it. But what the prosecution in this case has used this trial for political purposes, the mass media and the public have used it for entertainment purposes. The question that we have to resolve is, and there's some very delicate questions of law involved in this case. Were those questions of law analyzed in a detached, you might say, ivory tower atmosphere? Or were they analyzed in some other atmosphere? This is the big question, because we're dealing with, as I say, an armed fortress. This Hall of Justice is an armed fortress. Everybody that comes in or out, or anyone that goes in, is searched, male, female, everyone.
Mr. Bugliosi said a while ago.
The press is not guilty of any crime, I suppose, any premeditated crime. The press, historically, our press has always been out there trying to get the story. What we're saying is that there are within, let's put it this way, the District Attorney of Los Angeles County and the Los Angeles Police Department had the capacity not to do certain things, which they did in connection with this case. And they started the ball rolling. There's no question about it.
Don't you think the direct participants in the proceedings
and the Los Angeles Times, pardon?
Don't you think the direct participants in the proceedings in the courtroom have the ability to create the carnival atmosphere?
Well, this carnival atmosphere started before there were any court appearances. This carnival atmosphere started way back in December, and before that in 1969. And the fact that people all over the world are interested in this case and so forth is because the District Attorney of Los Angeles County wanted to become Attorney General, and he used this case for publicity purposes. It's a cleverly calculated scheme. And because the District Attorney, for instance, has a publicity department, incredible as it may seem, there's an actual department in the District Attorney's office that feeds publicity. Now, the District Attorney of Los Angeles County was found in contempt of court. The man that's now Attorney General of the state of California, he was found in contempt of court for deliberately violating a court order on publicity. The appellate department of the Superior Court sustained that conviction of contempt. That's the lot. Some you know.
What about delays in this trial? One of the defense attorneys has sort of laid it off on the prosecution.
That's absurd, Dick. The genesis of the delays has not originated with the prosecution, but with the defense.
There's been a lot of rumblings and mumblings among the public about the numbers of delays in the Manson trial, and it seems to all be rubbing off on the defense. How about that?
Well, that's unfortunate, and it's somewhat misleading. There have been delays. There have been 2 delays in this trial, 2 continuances, and the two continuances were at the private request of the prosecution. On both occasions, I received a phone call privately at my office from the prosecution asking if I would go along with a continuance, and I indicated that I would. Now, the reason that a continuance was desired and sought by the prosecution was to delay this trial for a period of time so that Watson from Texas could be returned and tried along with all the other defendants. Now, I think that that was a perfectly good and valid reason for the delay, but I'm a little bit distressed at the impression the public has that the delays were at the behest and the request of the defense. They were at the request of the prosecution, but privately.
Just examining the court record will strongly indicate that nearly all of the motions in this case have been made by the defense. And by definition, when you make a motion, this necessitates considerable court time to resolve. So nearly all of the motions have been made by the defense, not by the prosecution. The prosecution is seeking a very quick, expeditious trial.
What about Watson?
Well, the highest court in Texas is going to rule tomorrow on whether he should be extradited to the state of California. We're very confident that the court in Texas will order Watson back.
You've just been excused as a prospective juror in the Manson trial. I understand because of hardship.
Yes, sir. I have a little boy, 3 years old, and I find that 6 months away from him, I wouldn't be able to cope with that.
Sure. How would you have handled yourself as a juror in connection with any pre-trial publicity you might have read or heard about?
I think that I would have tried to put that out of my mind and go into it with an open mind as much as I could, and try to base the trial on the evidence presented, and I don't think I would have dwelled too much on the pre-trial publicity.
Have you formed any kind of an opinion at this time about the guilt or innocence of these persons?
Yes, and what I have read, I don't know if I could, well, it's so, what would I say, it was brought out in such a way that it's hard to believe in a way that people could do something like that. I would really have to look at the evidence and study the people a little.
I see.
Mr. Manson and the girls involved.
Now that all this is over, can we ask you that? How do you feel? Leave it on or take it off. Are you relieved or remorseful?
Yeah. I don't feel very well.
You don't feel very well?
No, I don't feel very good at all.
Why?
We don't want to go into any of that.
Have you cried very much?
We don't want to go into that.
Yeah. What can you tell us? Can you tell us anything about this matter?
No, all of that will come out before the grand jury probably, and also in further investigation and talks that we have.
Are you physically all right, Miss Atkins?
Our request to see doctors and the requests have been handled off and on.
For what reason have you consulted the doctors?
Physical disorder.
Lady, look this way.
she indicated to the court that she wished to proceed pro per, that is, to represent herself. The court arraigned her, that is, informed her of the charges that are pending against her. They did not take a plea from her. They set that off for 1 week to be heard on March the 3rd. And in the interim, the public defender will be representing her in sort of a caretaker-type status. And 1 week from now, on March the 3rd, the court will rule whether or not she is to represent herself.
Some people might not know enough about law to adequately defend themselves. Do you think the court should be very cautious about that?
She does, yeah.
Oh, why would she know? And I'm not being argumentative. I'm just wondering how she would know.
She's very, very bright. You know, she'd know how to handle it.
She's the only one that can do it.
She's the only one that can speak for, you know, certainly not the public defender's office can speak for her. Only she can speak for herself.
I'm not privy to their battle plan, Dick, but I can just say that it's much more effective when 4 defendants present a common, unified defense than when they're each trying to incriminate each other at the trial.
Are you suggesting that Manson may well end up persuading all of the defendants to act as their own attorneys?
I can't be sure of this, but that seems to be the trend. There seems to be an unmistakable trend in that direction, that they're all either going to represent themselves or be represented by one common attorney.
Their food was cached in various places and in many places. A particular thing about these people, that most of the food that they had stashed was candy, not what I would call staple foods such as potatoes, beans, and whatnot. It was mostly candy. And this is for my opinion only. I think carbohydrates or sugar is our bigger menace right now than marijuana will ever be. All these people eat sugar, smoke marijuana, and they act like children from probably 13 to the 15 age group. One girl told me that she had been through 5 years of college. I told her I got the same degree. I went in 5 minutes. I went through the front door and out the back. This is the type of people you're having to deal with. There's no mode of operation. You don't know what might happen to them. They live like animals, not like people. They have a great desire to run around in the nude, both men and females. In the jail here, we bathed them as they came in. We started out with, if my memory serves me correctly, it was 17. The Los Angeles juvenile authorities took one the first night. The rest of them were bathed and their hair was washed, and we gave them jail clothes. And the matron tells me that when she went in, each and every time that they were in the nude, whenever she had to have one to come out for interrogation or see the lawyer, while you had to wait to put their clothes on. I suppose this is all right if you want to live that way, but this seems to be their mode of life.
Sheriff, does Manson seem to be the leader of these people, even while they're behind bars, the ones that you still have here?
Well, apparently he is, but I'm not so sure that Manson is the leader. I'm not so sure that this is the right man, Manson.
What do the others call him? Do they call him by his name, Charles Manson, or do they call him by some other name?
They call him Jesus Christ or Mr. Manson. If he is their leader, he has some kind of influence over them. one Sunday they got word from him that they were to cleanse their bodies, and they wanted peanut butter and honey, nothing else. Well, we serve a diet here that's substantial. We went through this not over 6 months ago. It runs some 32 to 36 calories per day, and we just don't make special diets for special people.
Sheriff, what makes you think he is not the leader?
I'd rather not.
To ask this man any questions, not even his name. You're to stay at least 5 feet away from him, take pictures of him all you want, to the courthouse steps, and that is all.
What happens if we don't?
You might go to jail.
Okay, thanks. Back up a little, you guys. Back up a little bit.
Today? Yes. All 2 counts of concealing stolen property and 1 count of vehicle theft. They haven't heard the evidence on it yet.
And what is the hearing? What is occurring?
Preliminary examination on those charges.
Getting too close. We'll get the center.
Case, 21-year-old Susan Atkins is involved in still another murder case. She appeared in the Santa Monica City courtroom this morning to enter a plea in a trial stemming from the July 31st murder of 34-year-old Gary Hinman. Los Angeles police have placed Miss Atkins, also known as Sadie Glutz, at the scene of the Tate murders.
Is she a member of the commune that we've heard described by the chief of police of Los Angeles?
Yes, she is.
How long had she been with him?
For about 3 years.
What, were they under any kind of narcotics or?
Well, there's been some evidence that some of them were involved in drugs. However, in her case, I can state that she was just totally dedicated to one man and did whatever he felt was right, and whatever he said was wrong is exactly what she would do or follow.
Of a roving band of hippies who lived for a time at a movie ranch about 25 miles west of downtown Los Angeles. They later moved from that ranch to Death Valley. The group was broken up last October after sheriff's deputies investigated a series of thefts. When the deputies raided the camp, some of the women were nude and some wore only bikini bottoms. The men had shoulder-length hair and wore beads. 8 children were with the group and 2 infants were found to be suffering from malnutrition. Reporter Ken Grau visited their former home, Spawn Ranch, and talked with foreman Mike Armstrong and his wife, Denise.
Had you heard that these 3 might be involved with the Tate and LaBianca murders?
Yes, sir.
What were your reactions?
I wasn't surprised.
Any unusual things that they did while they were here?
Well, they were constantly taking dope and drinking wine and stealing cars and anything else you can think of.
Do you personally feel that Charlie Watson could have had something to do with the Tate and LaBianca murders?
Yes. I do. But I don't believe he did it himself. I believe he had somebody else do it. I'll tell you why. Because Charlie, on this one killing, he used another man's gun. And he forced this man, by using his gun, into a position where the man couldn't get out of it. I mean, just like Charlie would have you go to bed with one of his teenage girls. Get you loaded and have you go to bed with him, then you're obligated to him. And you got to do as he says. Or else you're dead, or you're hurt.
The jury was out for many days, 7 full days of
The penalty phase of the trial begins Thursday. Some say this could last 2 months or even more. Defense attorneys and the defendants will no longer argue innocence or guilt, but rather life or death. John Marshall, Channel 5 News, reporting.
Not to be allowed on the floor. Can we go
Just
somewhere
today?
else?
Yeah.
Oh,
Let's on the Manson fact.
Well, you tell us what the other side is. What is the other side?
I was
As soon as they let us testify.
Why won't they let us testify?
I can tell the public right now. What is the other side?
We cannot speak for Charles Manson. We cannot speak for Patricia Krenwinkel, Leslie Van Houten, or Susan Atkins. Why can't they speak to you? Because they're hiding their words.
Put a stomach in. I was there. I just left that building.
Why didn't the defense put on your side of what happened? Why did they...
Because they're hiding the truth. In the name of fair trial, what, you know, there's no fair
In
trial.
other words, do you think Charlie and the rest of the girls wanted to tell their side?
But I feel sorry for you. I respect your opinion and your feelings.
During the penalty?
Themselves, and they are going to get back everything they've put out.
The others, but to protect him.
He would tell you.
Because bad news.
Why do you have no sympathy for him? I don't understand.
Well, actually, for the crime that he did. You see, in other words, I'm no better than he is, and in a certain respect, I am. Now, if I commit a crime, if I say pull an armed robbery and kill someone, I'm there to get some money. But I'm not going to go and kill people just for the hell of killing them for a political reason or otherwise.
When did you last see Manson?
Oh, about 2 weeks ago.
Did you talk to him often?
I talked to him because...
What does he tell you?
See, since it's he's in the focus, say, of the world, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's a celebrity, so to speak. All right. Now, I'm there. Kenneth. Now, maybe 30 years from now, he'll still be a celebrity, not going to say, well, I knew him, I talked with him. Now, I don't respect him, but nevertheless, I was there.
Has he ever said anything to you that might be considered, in your opinion, to be an admission of guilt?
Well, I'll tell you what, if he did, I wouldn't tell you.
Why?
Because it's not in my nature to do so.
That's right. Well, you seem
in other words, you're saying...
You seem to talk as though the man is guilty.
In other words, you're saying... No, you're saying that if I was able to... If he was to tell me something that to indicate that he was guilty, and that if I'd have presented these facts to the people, and that I could have walked, if I would have done so, more or less, I wouldn't have did it. That's not in my nature to do so.
When you did talk to him, what did you...
Oh, well, how you doing? How they treating you? How's the case going? The case is going beautiful, you know?
Is that what he says?
Well, the man, you've got to give him credit for it. See, here's a man that you can't... When you kill him, you'll kill him in the gas chamber, but you can't kill him up there. The man's got too much soul. See, he believes in what he thinks is right. Just like the President of the United States believes that what he's doing is right. Otherwise, we wouldn't have our troops in Vietnam, right? Well, he believes in his heart that what he's done was right. But I believe that what he did, he's sick. That's only my opinion.
Well, you say he did it. Why do you keep saying this?
Well, maybe I am brainwashed because of what I've read. I wasn't there. Nobody was there.
What's your name, please?
Joe Fernandez.
Where do you live, Joe?
3.
I heard. Thank you.
Furthermore, prosecutors should
stand still a second right there while you'll be happy. That's very beautiful.
Beautiful, Charlie.
Are
you all happy with your courts?
Yeah.
Happy with Are you happy with it? Am I happy? Yeah. Your court, I wouldn't accept it. You gonna cop out there? Killing the Indians.
Oh, that's good.
Turn around once, girls, will you? Come on here, girls.
First of all, I believe it's very clear that Mr. Manson always has been denied counsel of his choice in this matter. Back in December, he was asking to have Mr. McKissick and Mr. Steinberg as his attorneys of record, and I would hope possibly to try and get them involved in this case, possibly even to substitute out and have them substitute in.
Is this your first case that you'll be trying?
Yeah, this will be the first case that I've ever tried.
How long have you been an attorney?
Just since last June.
Are you going to go ahead with the psychiatric examination?
No, we've withdrawn the psychiatric examination. I've seen Mr. Manson in county jail for probably more than any other attorney, 70, 80 times, and it's certainly my feeling that Mr. Manson is sane. There's no question about his sanity.
This is the first time this has ever been attempted, to my knowledge, and this is not second-guessing or criticizing the trial court. It's just an attempt to explain to the community what we're trying to do. I don't think any prosecutor's ever tried to get a defense counsel removed from a case before, and that's admittedly what we're trying in this case. Our reasons are simple. In the first place, in spite of everything we do, this is going to be one of the most expensive and drawn-out criminal trials in history. There are a variety of reasons. It relates to the length of time it's taking to get a defendant back from Texas. It relates to the number of defendants. It relates to the number of victims. It relates to changes in the law in recent years regarding representation. And that's, of course, one of the major problems we face now. In recent years, the question of representation has become more difficult and more confused, and I have nothing but sympathy for the trial court. If a defendant today says he wants to represent himself, the judge is damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. If he lets the defendant represent himself, very likely on appeal, the appellate court will say, no, he wasn't qualified and you shouldn't have let him represent himself. If you deny him the right to represent himself, then obviously that's going to be made a point of on appeal, and maybe the appellate court will disagree with the trial court. So, as I say, I have nothing but sympathy with the trial court. They're asking the Supreme Court to order the trial judge to hold a hearing relative to the qualifications of Mr. Manson's attorney. We have a number of witnesses, including 8 judges, prepared to testify concerning his competence and qualifications. We think that under the circumstances that the Supreme Court should order a hearing, and we'd like to have the question concerning his qualifications determined in advance of the trial. Nothing is being held up. Meantime, the jurors are being examined. If the Supreme Court rules against us, we've tried. We would much prefer to face this issue relative to the qualifications of Mr. Manson's attorney now than we would 2, 3, 4 years from now.
To ignite helter-skelter, to start the black-white revolution, Manson envisioned that white people would turn against the black man if they thought the black man had committed these 7 murders, and ultimately there would be a civil war between blacks and whites out on the street. Manson told his followers that this would be a bloodbath in the streets of every American city. Manson foresaw that the black man would win this war. But later on, he said the black man, because of inexperience, would simply not be able to handle the reins of power. So we would have to look around at those white people who had survived, who had escaped from helter-skelter. In other words, turn over the reins of power to Charles Manson and his family. So in the last analysis, Mr. Manson, in his mind, in his twisted mind, he envisioned that he and his family would be the ultimate beneficiaries of a black-white civil war.
Why the LaBiancas and the persons in the Tate House? Why were they selected by Manson as victims?
Well, you have to realize that if you're going to have a bizarre motive like this, it doesn't really make any difference who the victims are, except the victims by necessity had to be white and preferably in the white establishment. But other than that, there was no particular reason.
Do the girls really believe he's Jesus Christ reincarnated?
There is evidence that they actually believe that Charles Manson is Jesus Christ.
We just thought that the opening statement degenerated into some form of name-calling. In terms of the factual allegations that were made by Mr. Bugliosi, they were expected.
What was Manson's reaction?
Well, as you gentlemen saw, Manson and the other defendants sat rather coolly and placidly and listened to the evidence, or listened to what he purported was the evidence was going to demonstrate.
Well, what was the mark on his head, on his forehead? What's that X he's got?
On his forehead, the cross.
It appears that he has a scab in the form of an X on his forehead in blood. It apparently was done with a razor blade. Manson has taken the position that that is a symbolic gesture indicating that he has X'd himself out of society at large. I think the jury perpetuated the very crime they sought to eradicate, and I just wonder about a society that kills its problem children. I wonder if that society isn't denying itself its own access to insight and information. Further, I think that I fail to see how this has helped anyone. I fail certainly to see how it's helped my client or the other defendants, and I fail to see how it's helped this community or this country. It just seems to me to be a medieval relic of savagery, this death penalty.
Sandy, what are your thoughts of the verdict handed down?
What is the verdict?
Death.
For all of them?
Yeah, for all of them.
You know what? The system has just judged itself. It's just judged itself. It's all a matter of time now. We know where we're going.
Where?
To the desert. You can't kill love. You can't kill the soul. And the love and the soul is in the penitentiaries, and it's in the jails, and those brothers and sisters are coming out soon. And they're going to judge you as you have judged them.